and I want to get into the whole thing going on with Wall Street, and because somebody asked the question, and we brought it up before, because we're going to change topics right now. They were talking about the whole Wall Street events that are going on down there. How come there's not a lot of black people down there? And what I told somebody was that the reason why we're not down there is because we've been talking about this issue for the longest time. We're not new to this issue. You came to this issue after you got a chance to experience what was going on for us for generations and stuff, with the whole idea of unemployment and people getting richer and our communities getting poor and no one being concerned about those issues. All of a sudden now that you get a taste of the little bit of medicine that we've been dealing with, that we've been swallowing for generations and stuff, then you want me to go down there and sit down out there with you? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that what you should have been with us on this issue way before this even went down or whatever. But because people had their comfort zones, they were able to do whatever they wanted to do. Their life wasn't impacted. It didn't matter to them, the suffering of other people. So now I'm supposed to just always say it's all right. Now, you might not agree with it. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it.
Well, you know, it was interesting, though, in the article that you sent, one of the individuals that was, you know, one of the workers, bankers or whatever, that was going into work through the picket lines or through the people who are marching, he had made a comment about, well, if you all think that we have policy and decision-making abilities, then, you know, you're a little crazy, because a lot of the people who are part of that establishment don't have the ability. I mean, they may sympathize with the Wall Street people, but they have no say-so. So, you know, the direction of the anger and, you know, requests for change has to be pinpointed, you know, whether it's lack of regulation by the government to the banks or lack of regulation by, you know, whoever to, you know, these so-called patriotic businesses sending all the business overseas. People have to kind of narrow their direction and say what needs to be done. Otherwise, you know, they're just going to be, you know, talking.
You know, my thing that I thought was interesting, because I'm listening to how the conversation is being framed, and how people are looking to kind of direct where people are going in this whole movement. And I think that there's already a direction there. I think that these organizations and these news reporters, they're so slanted in their point of view to kind of make these people out to be crazies, or they're not focused or whatever. They're talking about specific issues. They elected particular people to listen to their gripes or whatever. Just like with the Tea Party, they didn't have any particular agenda or whatever. They complained about certain particular things, and that was it. So I think that there's no difference in that. I think that people need to look at the dissatisfaction and look at the anger or whatever, and to address that particular issue. I don't think that we should be looking for people to be bringing some agenda. The thing that we're talking about, for me, is the issue that's been affecting everybody in this country, and that's unemployment. That's talking about the mass inequity in terms of wealth in this country. That's something that, you know, how do you name that people? You couldn't even tell me the people that they even talk about, those 40 families that increased wealth of like almost 110% since the 1990s to now. Can we name even one of those families? Can you even got a picture of them? Have they ever been on the news? They're not. They're nameless faces, and that's because they control the media. And that's my problem, because the message is being lost in their complaint for an agenda. When people are saying to you, I'm hurting and things need to be done, this country should know what needs to be done.
You made a good point about the Tea Party and the Occupy Wall Street group. They do share some of the same concerns. The majority of the poll with Tea Party people do not want their Medicaid and Medicare cut. No. And the Occupy Wall Street, what's interesting about that, they're in about 140, 150 locations now throughout the country, is the disparity in income between the rich and the poor and those in between is greater than ever. And so, excuse me, so now we have the confluence of the Tea Party and this group includes a lot of young people who have these loans to pay. How are they going to pay? And they're looking at these rich people getting richer and richer, and black people, at least Russell Simmons and Kanye West were out there the other day.
Yeah.
And they were saying to Russell Simmons, well, you're rich. What are you doing here? Well, I'm concerned about the poor, so he's saying that. But what you said is true. There is a connection, the disparity that's been going on in this country for years.
Yeah, but you know, I think some sort of specifics needs to be outlined because, you know, I was watching a program the other day, and I don't think, she wasn't a Tea Party person, but she was a Republican, and her comment was, well, what's the idea behind the movement? Is it to bring, you know, bring businesses to their knees? And and the response was, well, okay, there is an in-between. It's not we're trying to bring the businesses to the knee, or we're just trying to let things stay status quo. There is an in-between, but the in-between has to be, you have to lay out the in-between. Is it, do you want them to stop sending business overseas? Do you want them to, you know, give more, you know, just like unions. Unions lay out their demands.
We got to get ready to wrap up this particular segment, and you can come back and welcome back, everybody. And we were having a conversation in the first segment talking about the whole Wall Street movement, and people call it the Arab Spring, and I think Farrakhan called it the Autumn Spring, where he said that it was a multiracial dissatisfaction with what's going on in America. And I think that that's really where the conversation needs to be kind of addressed. Not so much with the oligarchies and the people at the top, but I think this is a conversation with America about who we're going to be. And so, Jones, you had some other points you wanted to make, and I want to let you kind of finish those. Yeah,
I was just saying I admire the people for their dedication to the, you know, expressing themselves, because I think it's very necessary. My only concern is that I'm worried that because we've had in the past a lot of issues where the people who are who have the ability to make change, wait for these things to die down and don't change. I think that specifics needs to be, there needs to be specifics as to what's being demanded. And once you have those specifics laid out, at that point, if they're ignored, then you're showing that there's being some, you know, lack of movement, lack of compromise, things being unreasonable, because the I'm mad as hell and you know, don't want to take it anymore is ignored many times on many issues, and I think it will continue to be ignored by those people who really don't want to give up their piece of the pie.
We have, this is symptomatic of a major problem in the United States and part of the Western world, and how capitalism is expressed and dealt with in terms in the country. They're not just upset about Wall Street. It's the influence Wall Street exerts on the government, on their own elected officials, and upon the policies that these elected officials have that represents the Wall Street people, because they have so much money. It's a bad system where to get elected, you have to get money from the people who are going to influence you away from the people who actually do the voting for you. So you have in the neighborhoods, I voted for such and such, but the money didn't come from you. It came from the oligarchs, right, and from the rich and the most powerful, who also have the lobbyists who are there morning, noon, and night while you just going to work with your job. You work, you're driving a bus, you're teaching, or whatever. These people have an enormous influence on the government. And over years, they've been chipping away at the economic base of the lower income people. I mean, people below $100,000, just whipping them down and aggregating money to themselves, arrogating the money to themselves and the riches for themselves. And this has been little by little over a period of time. So it's not just Wall Street, it's the whole system that's being addressed.
I'm sorry, Bert. I was on Facebook. Yes, I was on Facebook. And we have a Facebook page where I'll put the information up at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Make sure you put your comments up there. And just know that when you call the phone number that you're going to see at the bottom here and you leave an intelligent comment, we actually air your viewer comments on the show. But Reginald Hudlin, the producer, he made a comment on his particular Facebook page. I thought it was very interesting. He said, you know, it's interesting how governments, like for example, state governments can ask a teacher who's making $50,000 to take a 20% pay cut, but they can't ask a person that is rich to pay 2% more in taxes. So again, this is about the conversation that we're having with America, and what kind of America we're going to be Is it going to be America which is fair? It's going to be honest. It's going to take care of its own, and it's going to do what's right. It was interesting, you know. I don't know if you watched the Republicans the other night. Okay, I mean, most people would say they probably didn't, but Kane was on there and they were attacking him. I thought it was very interesting, but he made some interesting points that I thought maybe we should be thinking about. One person who sent me a comment said that, you know, the problem with President Obama is that he doesn't know how to create jobs. And maybe we need somebody that's in office that runs a business and know how to do that. Well, Lorie, is that an intelligent conversation? Because I thought the government...
the government doesn't create jobs.
And I thought that they hire people
to
help.
She is correct.
And I thought that the Obama would have that delegated to some people, like he has an economic council or whatever. So the problem, it comes back to the point that you made, Bert, that these people that sit on these economic councils have usually a head of these corporations and things like that. They get appointed, and they push their own agendas to do what they think is best, not necessarily for America, but best for business.
There you go.
Yeah, and that's why, again, I really think specifics need to be outlined because, I mean, again, getting back into our history, we know that back in the days of civil rights, everybody who was doing wrong knew they were wrong. You know, they knew that preventing people from eating at a lunch counter or preventing people from riding the buses or getting a proper education or going to school, they knew that was wrong, but they did it anyway. You know, and we have a similar situation, you know, with our modern day movement where those people who are making filthy amounts of money and they know that the people that are working for them are making ridiculously low amounts of money and taking pay cuts, they know it's wrong, but they're not going to do anything different until you specifically outline this, and this is what we want to be done. Because then you can show that the lack of compromise is something that, like you said, is ruining the moral fiber of our country.
There's a dramatic, excuse me, my dear esteemed host. There's what you just said. There's a dramatic play out going on with the president now. He is like assuming the role, partially at least, in his growing, of representing us. He actually is framing the what something you said about the millionaires, the tax on the millionaires, and forced the Republicans to vote against taxing the millionaires, and just 2 votes short, Democratic votes, 50 votes in favor with the Democrats.
In the Senate, yeah.
In the Senate, yeah. And the polls are showing that more and more people are supporting his position on taxing millionaires. Now they went beyond the 250,000, and they framed it, like as you said, in a way people are going to understand it, and showing that there's some leadership that's representing somebody. So I appreciate what Obama is doing in this case, where he is actually putting it down to very simple to understand. Millionaires tax. Now you opposed to a millionaires tax? Oh, that puts you on the spot. You see, we need the tax to pay for the services that you're trying to cut. Very simple. I appreciate that.
No, I know that when people are looking at the quality of their lives and they're expressing themselves like Joe the Plumber did, okay? They didn't ask Joe the Plumber to have a tax plan ready when he was complaining about something. I think that people can look to individuals that already have defined some of these issues that's out there. People have been talking about these things. I know we've talked about income inequality several times on the show. We talked about how the students there's more student debt now than there's credit card debt, and we talked about the students that are defaulting on their debt and they can't get rid of it because of the change in the laws. And so so these things are common things. They're known. People are expressing their frustrations with them, and people are talking about there needs to be some type of change. They might not know specifically what needs to happen, but most people don't. But they know that something is wrong and it needs to be fixed. And I think that's the thing that is the message that needs to be taken away from this. And I don't think that we should be asking people to create policy. I think that people can help to do that. I don't think that some of these people are qualified to create policy, but I think that they can express things that people that know how to do those things focus on that. And I don't want people to lose the message in the mayhem that's going on out there, or what they want to define as mayhem. So I think it's important, and I think that we need to have something done, and at least have something going on now, because when you look at the politics of this job bill, for example, like the things that Bert is talking about, and we look at Republicans talk about, well, when Obama gave his first speech, we like a lot of things in this. We can work with that. Then maybe 2 days later, we can't work with this. We have our own plan or whatever. But the bottom line is there's still no one at work. When we looked at the job numbers that they just reported, a number of people that are getting jobs is going down again. Or the number of available jobs that out there has been reduced by almost 150,000 jobs. So there's less jobs for people out there looking for it. So how do you say to somebody that, hey, you shouldn't be frustrated, or you shouldn't be doing this or that, when they may not be able to articulate what needs to happen, but they can articulate their pain and their issues?
Well, that's where it gets back into a knowledge of your political power, where, like you said, the people who are whose job it is to make policy or to put forth bills, et cetera, know that their job is dependent on them following their constituency. But the constituency has to let them know, because we've seen a long history of congressmen, councilmen, people who should be saying stuff about major issues that aren't. And whether they're doing it for their own political, being able to schmooze with the other people who aren't saying anything, or whatever their reason is, they have to be forced to do that. And if forcing them means, we're not going to reelect you unless you put forth our issues, then that's what you have to do. But the issues have to be formulated. And if there's a large group of people who can't formulate it, then the people who can formulate it should join those movements. Because as we know, again, historically, with SNCC, and during the Civil Rights Movement, with SNCC and with the other major organizations, there was the student group, and then there was there was the individuals, the individuals who were just the grassroots people. Right. And SNCC said, "Look, okay, we may be able to articulate it better, but we need the support of the grassroots people,
and
they have to work together."
We got to give people time. I think the movement is still kind of new. I think it'll get there. It eventually will get there, and I think there are people out there to articulate it. I just think the problem is it hasn't been reported.